You know, we hear these big numbers all the time when it comes to AI. 95% accurate, 99% effective. And they feel safe, right? They feel definitive. But what if I told you those impressive numbers can tell a very convincing and sometimes a very dangerous lie? Let's peel back the layers on these AI claims and see what's really going on under the hood. Okay, so picture this. An AI is built to spot a rare but really serious disease for medical scans. The company behind it proudly announces it hits 99% accuracy. I mean, on the surface, that sounds incredible, right? Almost perfect. But here's the real question. Should we roll this out in hospitals tomorrow? And your first impulse is probably to say, absolutely, let's go. But that 99% number, even though it's technically true, is hiding a potentially fatal flaw. And to understand why, we've got to stop looking at that one single number and start looking at what the AI is actually doing. This brings us to what a lot of people in the field call the 99% accuracy lie. It's this classic trap where a model looks absolutely brilliant on paper, but could fail spectacularly in the real world. This is especially true when the stakes are high and the data isn't perfectly balanced, which happens all the time in areas like medical imaging. Okay, so this table right here, this pulls back the curtain. Just look at the data with me. Over on the left, with balanced data, everything looks great. But as the data gets more imbalanced, like with a rare disease, look what happens. The accuracy barely drops. It's still at 92%. Still sounds pretty good, doesn't it? But look at the recall score. It has absolutely plummeted to 41%. What does that even mean? It means for every 10 people who are actually sick, this highly accurate AI is completely missing 6 of them. It's getting that high accuracy score by just getting really good at saying you're healthy to everyone, completely failing the very people it was built to save. So how do we avoid falling into this accuracy trap? Well, we use a tool called the confusion matrix. It sounds complicated, but it's really just a simple grid that forces us to look at a model's performance in 4 distinct ways. It gives us the full story, not just that one misleading headline number. All right, first up, the true positive. This is the best case scenario, exactly what you want to see. The model sees the disease in the scan, and guess what? The patient actually has the disease. It's a correct hit, a perfect match. And just as important, you have the true negative. The model looks at the scan, says, nope, no disease here, and the patient is in fact healthy. It's a correct rejection. And a model's ability to do this well is measured by a metric called specificity. A model with high specificity is great at clearing healthy patients and preventing a whole lot of unnecessary panic. Now we get to the errors. A false positive is basically a false alarm. The model screams disease, but the patient is totally healthy. This, as you can imagine, causes a ton of unnecessary stress and can lead to expensive and sometimes even risky follow-up tests. And then there's this one. This is often the most dangerous error of all, the false negative, the miss. The model says you're all clear, but the patient is actually sick. This is catastrophic. That person gets sent home, untreated, while their disease gets worse. This is exactly the mistake our 99% accurate model was making again and again and again. So when you lay out these 4 outcomes, you start to see this fundamental tension in machine learning. It's this constant push and pull, a trade-off between 2 competing goals, and we call them precision and recall. The thing is, you can almost never maximize both at the same time. Let's break them down. Think of precision as your certainty metric. It answers a simple question. Of all the times the model raised a red flag and said something was positive, how often was it actually right? High precision just means fewer false alarms. Then there's recall, which, by the way, in medical fields is often called sensitivity. Think of this as your safety net metric. It asks, of all the actual positive cases that existed out there in the world, how many did our model manage to catch? High recall means fewer dangerous misses. Okay, so when do you care more about one than the other? Well, you focus on precision when the cost of a false positive is super high. Think about credit card fraud detection. A false positive there means blocking your card when you're trying to buy groceries. That's a terrible customer experience. Or think about your email spam filter. A false positive means that important job offer could land in your junk folder. In these cases, you want to be really, really certain before you flag something. And you prioritize recall or sensitivity when the cost of a false negative is, well, devastating. For medical screening, you would much rather have a few false alarms that you can clear up later than miss a single case of cancer. For a self-driving car's pedestrian detector, you absolutely positively cannot afford to miss a person in the road. The number one priority is to cast the widest safety net possible. But what about all those situations where both kinds of errors are equally bad? You can't just pick one over the other. You need some way to find that perfect balance between precision and recall. And this is where the F1 score comes into play. It's what's known as the harmonic mean of precision and recall. Now, without getting too deep into the math, what that really means is that it heavily penalizes a model for being lopsided, being great at one thing but terrible at the other. It forces a true balance, giving you a single number that reflects both. This is perfect for something like quality control and manufacturing, where shipping a faulty product is bad, but scrapping a perfectly good one is also a waste of money. So far, all these metrics, precision, recall, F1, they all kind of depend on us picking a specific decision threshold. Drawing a line in the sand and saying, anything above an 80% confidence score, we'll call a disease. But what if we want to know how good the model is before we even pick that number? How can we evaluate its overall skill across all the possible thresholds? Yeah, this is a huge question. How can we measure a model's fundamental ability to just tell the difference between a positive case and a negative one, completely independent of where we end up setting our final decision line? And the answer is this thing called the ROC curve. It's a graph that brilliantly visualizes a model's performance. The up and down y-axis, that's the true positive rate, which you already know is just another name for recall or sensitivity. The side-to-side x-axis is the false positive rate, so you can literally see the trade-off. A perfect model would have a curve that shoots straight up and then straight over to the top left corner, 100% true positives with 0% false positives. Now, that curve is fantastic for seeing what's going on, but sometimes you just need one number to compare models. And that's where AUC, or the area under the curve, comes in. It's a single value that summarizes that whole graph. Essentially, it tells you this. If you pick one random positive case and one random negative case, what's the probability that the model will give a higher risk score to the positive one? An AUC of 1 is a perfect classifier. An AUC of 0.5 might as well be flipping a coin. It lets us see at a glance which model just has more raw power to tell things apart. Okay, we've gone through a lot here. So after all this, what's the big takeaway? What's the bottom line that helps you make sense of all these AI performance claims without getting misled? Here's what you really need to remember. First off, there is no single best metric, period. The right one always depends on the problem you're trying to solve. Second, you have to be deeply skeptical of accuracy alone, especially when you're dealing with rare but critical events. Third, always ask, what are the real-world consequences of each type of error? And finally, you have to realize that choosing a metric isn't just a stats problem. It's a practical and ethical decision that defines what we truly value most. And look, don't just take my word for it. Researchers at the National Institutes of Health put it perfectly. They said that sensitivity and specificity, our ability to catch the disease and to clear the healthy, they reveal so much more about a model than accuracy, especially when the data is imbalanced. It's all about looking at the complete picture. So the next time you see that headline about some new AI with stunning performance, you'll be ready. You won't just ask, how accurate is it? You'll ask, accurate at what? What's the recall for the cases that truly matter? And what's the cost of being wrong? Because that's the question that really counts.